Okay, perfect. It's recording now, so we'll see if Morgan is on here.
Hey, are you muted, Morgan? There.
Is that better?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
great.
Hey,
Okay.
Morgan, do you feel like taking notes?
Am I what? Sorry.
Do you feel like taking the notes of our meeting?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay, so someone's supposed to take notes. We talk for 45 minutes, and then the last 15, we're supposed to re-go over the notes you took.
Okay.
Good? Okay.
That sounds good.
Okay.
You guys, last time we had this meeting, we actually started with prayer. Did you guys do that too? Or
Nope, that sounds good though.
Yeah, that's
okay.
fine.
Hey, I'll do it if you like. I can be helpful that way. Okay. Our dear kind Heavenly Father, we're grateful for this opportunity that we get to discuss this case study, and we're grateful that we learned about the life of Zach and what an incredible example he was of loving his family. And we're grateful for the many blessings that we have. We're grateful for this opportunity that we've had to go to school and to be blessed with more knowledge. And we say this in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Okay, there it is. Okay. Okay, so how should we start this off? Like, should we start by talking about what we saw in, like, as the description of what the story was about, or do we need to just jump right in? Any thoughts?
So I'm just looking over the instructions here.
Okay.
This is we're discussing the family therapy session, right? We're going over the actual therapy session that the therapist had with the family.
Right.
Okay.
That the therapists have with who?
So there was
a video with the therapist and a husband and wife and 2 children. And it's a 50-minute video of a therapy session.
Oh, didn't see it. Sorry, guys.
It's okay.
Okay. So it's just says take turns talking about the points you identified, both overt and the more subtle ones. So do we just want to kind of take turns, or?
Yeah, we can take turns. I can start off by just saying a few of the things that I thought I noticed with the therapist himself. So the chapter that we read talks about different kinds of approaches that we can integrate into counseling and helping families. And a few of the things that I noticed, one was specifically, I just think that the therapist had a really positive outlook, which is one of the key points and concepts of the actual chapter, is that he really just looked at the family as, I can make a difference, but the family will make a better difference if I help them see the meaning and deeper meaning behind what's going on and how to actually combat it. So I think that was one of the big things that I saw him implement, and he did that throughout the entire thing. Like, he wasn't ever negative about Jimmy's leaving at night or the family arguing. He was just acknowledging it and moving past it to see what they could do to improve. So I think that was one of the key points that I saw. Let's see what else I saw. I also think there's a slight hint, I didn't see this a ton, but there was a slight hint of the transcendence and spirituality. He made a few references, but it wasn't very blatant. He just said, it doesn't matter if you're religious or not, but I feel like parents, if they talk and communicate with each other, they are blessed with creative ideas on how to help their family grow. So that's another one of the things that I kind of saw that he implemented to help the family understand. I don't know. What are your guys' thoughts about what you saw in the video?
So I felt like both of those things were good. Affirming family strengths. I felt like he kind of kept bringing back like, your sister misses you because you guys were close, and kind of bringing out the, these feelings that they're having are from a good place,
Mhm.
not from like anger or something like that. And then he was really big on normalizing multiple times throughout the session. Oh, of course he's not spending as much time. He's 18, and of course you guys fight. That's normal. Of course women react different than men. This is physically why. Like he just helped them understand like you guys aren't crazy. You're a normal family, and let's figure out how to move forward. Let's see, like you said, he wasn't trying to find, okay, well, is this Jimmy's fault, and who can we blame for this? He was saying, okay, this is happening, let's move forward from here, and just tried to figure out what the next steps are. I don't even know if it wasn't even this reading. I don't know which class it was for, but it was talking about like the circular families instead of like the linear. So instead of trying to place blame, um, realizing that everybody affects everybody, and we don't even need to figure out why are you upset, and are you justified in being upset. Just moving on and figuring out how to solve it at that point. um Morgan, it's going to be hard to type and talk. Do you have any?
I can just type afterwards. I don't know. I really thought he was just an amazing therapist. Kind of just like what you guys have already said. He was really trying to just help people understand one another's perspective, and without placing blame, like you were saying, Emily, which is really awesome and really hard to do. I think it would be in that situation, like to not start being like, oh, well, you know what? Mom, you need to be a little less crazy. Dad, you need to step up a little bit. Son, calm it down. I would have such a hard time. But he's really good.
Yeah.
I don't know, moderating the conversation to where it didn't escalate. So that was cool.
Another thing, under communication and problem solving, it talks about clear information, and it says uncertainty fuels anxiety. And I felt like he did a really good job at pointing that out multiple times, that like mom is worried because she doesn't know what's going on, and if she knew, we could solve a lot of this. And so just that basic idea that when somebody doesn't know, they start filling in the gaps, and that's never good, especially if you're a girl. So
Yeah.
I think on the flip side of that too, I think he did a really great job of filtering the information and making it more concise by repeating what he heard back from them to clarify so that everyone understood exactly what was going on. And one of the things that I was also going to mention is that he laid out an entire timeline of like everything that the family had said from beginning to end. Like near the end of the actual therapy session, he said, "This is what's going on. This is what every single person is feeling, and this is why they're feeling that way." And I think he just did a really great job of using the information that they gave them to just lay it out for all of them so that they could understand that this is kind of a cyclical pattern. Like Jimmy leaves the home because he feels like they don't care about him, and that makes them feel like he's being more irresponsible, so then they continue to do that. So that then they can see like it's going to be better if we actually communicate and show that we care instead of just lashing out every single time. I thought that was really beneficial. I think it really helped just clarify everything that was going on so that they can see how to move on from the actual event.
Yeah, just going along those same lines. In Family 420, if you've taken it, it's the helping relationship. It's basically just putting into practice a little bit more of, that therapist and like helpy relationship. But it talks a lot about reflections of content and emotion, and he did that really well. Uh, Whoa. Oh, scary. Sorry. But it's basically summarizing back to everyone in a different way what happened to show that he's not just kind of listening and, just being someone that's there, but actually showing that he's taking everything to heart and really understanding. So he integrated a lot of those amazing skills.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think you did a great job overall.
Have we watched videos with him before? Like, I swear I know him. Do we know who he was or anything?
He might be a professor, but I don't know.
I need to figure out who he was because the whole time I was like, I know this guy. Who is he?
He seems familiar.
I don't know. Okay. So another thing I wrote down was, okay, bringing out positive interactions. Now, not much of the interaction in the family at this point is positive. The parents, all of their communication is pretty tense, it sounded like, and the brother and sister, maybe the mom and daughter are kind of positive, I don't know. But so I was kind of thinking like, well, there's nothing positive, but it says expressions of love. And I thought, there were a number of times where he had the mom and dad sit together and there was immediate closeness between them. And I think that was very intentional. And then he had the father turn to the son and what did he say? He had him express why he was worried or something like that. I don't remember. But
Yeah.
he had them pause literally and look at each other. And he had the dad ask the mom on a date. I mean, when do you think the last time that happened was? And like he started helping them practice showing love since they've gotten to a place where that's not comfortable for them anymore. They're tense and argue and stuff. So I thought that was really neat that in a fairly comfortable way he had them start practicing, because you can tell somebody you need to express love, but it's once you start practicing it that it becomes more comfortable and natural. So that he even started that in their setting there in therapy. Oh, so it kind of seemed like he touched on this, but in our reading it talked a lot about I don't know where it is, but about how you'll start to see um, negative behavior around stressful situations. And he kind of brought up a couple times, uh, you moved and dad's gone a lot more. And so I felt like in future therapy sessions that might be brought up a little more on like how to reunify as a family. Um, but so I think he was kind of acknowledging like there's triggers that are causing this, and even Jimmy, when he was talking, he obviously had some resentment that dad was gone a lot and stuff like that. And I think that's kind of the person he felt close to. So, that kind of went along with our reading that changes in stressful situations can kind of trigger a change in behavior and that affects the whole family.
I think going off of what you just said as well, I think one really great way that he helped like bond the family and use connectedness as a way to help was um, he linked the reactions of the children to the reactions of the parents. Like he helped the dad understand that he was a little bit more like Jimmy in the way that they express, um, like the way they respond to a stressing event. Like they both shut down, and that the daughter and the mother, they respond by speaking out when they're frustrated or when they're feeling stressed out or in the event. And he kind of just helps them understand that they're not that much different from each other, and that helps bring them all a little bit closer. And I think along with that too, he just helps them to, throughout the entire video, one thing that he really did a great job was just um, encourage emotional expression, sorry. And he helped them to state what they were feeling. Like the husband, he's concerned for his wife, but she didn't really think about that. And he feels like she's a little bit too hard, and that makes him a little more worried for Jimmy because he knows that the mom's acting, overreacting to Jimmy's experience. So I think that he just really pinpoints what they're feeling during each part of the event, and he really just helps them to express that, because before then they weren't expressing anything. Like the parents had no idea that Jimmy didn't know that they cared about him. They were just upset that he wasn't coming home before 1 or 2. So I think he really did a great job of helping them to express, which they hadn't done beforehand.
Yeah, and also that Jimmy felt unwanted. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't have even guessed that, he's just mad and he wants to be out and he wants to be left alone is what I would have assumed. But he had the opportunity to share, actually, I don't feel like I'm wanted here, and so why would I be here?
Yeah. Which is so crazy. Like, his parents were staying up so late for him and everything. So I thought it was really interesting that was kind of what came out from it, was that he felt like he wasn't wanted home.
Yeah.
So what are some different points of resiliency that you could kind of see in the family currently and where they were heading? Because just one thing that I thought of was Jimmy actually going out and having those activities to turn to when he was a little bit frustrated and feeling alone. And that they did have communication within the family, even though it was a little bit rigid. They still had those few points.
I think going off on that too is like one of the points of resiliency is having parents set firm boundaries, because that, what is the word, subconsciously expresses that they care for their children. And even though the way they responded when Jimmy broke the rules caused him to get into like a negative feedback loop, he was feeling like he wasn't cared for, they were still trying to maintain those boundaries and those limits to him, because they thought that that would help him to stay out of trouble. And they had already learned from the daughter that he could be at risk for trouble. And so they're trying to, put the limits on top of what their normal boundaries were.
Mm-hmm.
And it sounded like he wasn't really keeping up his end of the bargain by doing the chores and everything like that. So it made sense to them to try and continue with the boundaries, because that's their way that they thought they would build the resilience as well.
Mm-hmm.
And what was your second question? Like, what could they improve on, or what things do you think could build in the future?
Yeah, or what were they kind of heading towards with the help of their therapist?
Well, he had them specifically set up situations so that they can strengthen their family ties, but also like their sibling ties, their marital ties, their father-son ties, like the sub units in the family. so I had just marked that he was working to help them under the protective mechanisms. Number 3 is strengthen protective family processes and reduce vulnerabilities. And so the more Jimmy does feel unwanted, the more vulnerable he is to negative influences. And so stepping in and strengthening those ties between everyone, I felt was a really obvious thing the therapist was trying to do, rebuilding those relationships. And even, like, had Jimmy say, "Do you miss your sister?" And he said, "Well, I miss what she used to be." And so then, okay, go get a soda together and tell her what it's going to be like to be a senior. Even to suggest what you can talk about, because maybe they're like, "What are we going to talk about?"
Mhm.
Yeah. That's true.
I think one thing too is he just really opened up avenues for them to actually communicate. Like you said, like he set up each activity to help them with their communication. And it wasn't just like fluff communication, it was actually talking about things that were relevant to them and helping them to learn and develop those patterns of emotional communication, like actual content and actual feelings, so that they can understand what's going on with each other. And I feel like that, in terms of Jimmy's like positive like growth and the families, is that he will feel more like he's a part of the family and not like he's lost, because he's already feeling lost right now. But having the family feel like, or having him feel like he's not wanted, will continue to make that worse. So I feel like he just kind of helped Jimmy to feel like there's a way for him to express what he's feeling. And I feel like that will just help him to be a little bit more responsible in the home and with his friends. He may even, text the dad at nighttime, because he communicates better with his dad, and just let him know, hey, I'm out for a little bit longer. I'll be back soon, or something like that. I think it just really put down a really good foundation for them.
Mhm.
Okay. So I don't know if this is something I should talk about, but one thing I wrote down is so he had the move seats a couple of times, and both times he had the daughter move. And um okay, was it this class where we read the thing about, I think it was about the shadow child?
Yeah, I think that was in conjunction with Zach's story
Yeah,
this week.
yeah, okay. So it kind of, having just read that this week, and then I don't know if you guys saw it or felt the same thing, but when he had her move the second time and he put her off of the couch in the chair by herself and moved Zachary to the couch, she like made this facial expression and
I saw that.
moved. And, did you see it?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah. So, just if I was doing a case study on this, I would have noted that, one concern is that so much attention is being paid to Jimmy that the daughter, the sister, might be resenting him more. And then she just physically got moved. And to me, it felt very upsetting to her that she was the one on the outside. Jimmy was then on the inside and she was one on the outside. And I've seen that with my own kids. Like, they're doing okay when the other sibling's the one in trouble. And then when they get put on the outside, it doesn't work. But I don't know, that just when she got moved and the physical, just how obvious it was that she was no longer part of the 3 and she got moved to that outside, seemed to really bother her. And so I also worried that, like, not saying that she's not sincere in her worry for her brother, but maybe it's more comfortable when her brother is the one who's the scapegoat on the outside. And she's got her comfortable place with mom and dad. So,
That's a
I
good
mean,
way to look at that.
there's not an answer for that. That's just something that I noticed. And, I think, I guess because in my own family, stuff like this is going on, and it makes it really hard to move past, because if one child has something about the negative situation that's making them more comfortable, sometimes even subconsciously they don't realize it, but they don't want things to get better because things getting better in their mind represent losing their good spot.
Yeah. If I can point something out too that I noticed as well, um, it was really great that the therapist brought this up, with the fact that the daughter was the one who was kind of ratting Jimmy out. But along with what you're saying with the whole shadow child situation, I feel like one of the emotions that the daughter is feeling is that her parents are going to her for information. And so that's the only type of attention she's getting, is
Yeah.
being a source of information. So she's becoming more of like a lead for them instead of an actual child. And so she's feeling like her parents aren't giving her the type of attention, which is probably feeding into her negative emotions toward Jimmy. Like,
Yeah.
feeling like he's robbing her of that positive experience with her parents, especially at a vulnerable position, being a junior and feeling all of the emotions of going into senior life and everything like that. She's just feeling like she kind of got the end of the stick. She didn't really get that much. Her parents are just going to her for help, where that's a lot of pressure and a lot of responsibility for a youth that age, to feel like they're the only ones that can really provide that source of information for their parents.
And it almost forces a bad relationship between her and Jimmy at that point, because she's feeling resentment. She's focusing on his negative. She's like being their spy, and then he's resenting her because she is their spy.
Mm-hmm.
It's really hurting that sibling relationship.
Yeah.
Let's see. I did think that he was very specific with a lot of the things, like take your sister, go get a soda, talk about senior year, go on a date, go, where are you going, talk about this. But the family council, which, I mean, he didn't call it that, but sit down on a Sunday for 30 minutes. I felt like that would probably be completely too broad at this point. Like maybe he should have said, talk about these points, or just given something a little bit more specific. I mean, I can't remember. He vaguely said like to kind of talk about how you can start communicating better. It was just really broad, I thought. And so, like, I mean, he did an amazing job, but if I'm having to sit here and figure out what to talk about for 45 minutes, that would be something that stood out to me, is maybe give something a little bit more specific with that as well. Because if any of them would be hard, it would probably be the family council. It would be easier to do the one-on-ones, whereas a family council might be a little bit more uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
He also pointed out to the family that they're in the launching stage and that's a hard phase. And, he likened it to himself to, again, normalize. You're in a launching phase. This is normal fears, normal anxieties and stuff.
Yeah. So I think some of the things that we're supposed to point out that we were surprised as well. We're supposed to point out surprising observations. One thing, so my wife and I watched this together, and she's not a marriage and family major, but she's really interested in like counseling and therapy. And one of the things that we noticed is the therapist is very proactive when it comes to the conversation, and sometimes he kind of jumps the gun on responding to what they're saying. And at first it was kind of distracting for him to do that, because it sounded like he was trying to feed Jimmy's answers. But at one point, I can't remember exactly where it is, but there's like a tiny like risk of the mom like flaring up and responding negatively to either Jimmy or the husband, and he like cuts her off right there and asks her another question, says like, how do you feel about what's going on at this point in our conversation, like responding to what she was saying in a way that kind of drew her back from responding negatively and causing there to be an outburst during the conversation, which I think, in my personal opinion, would have completely destroyed the progress that he would have made, because she would have ended up lashing out at Jimmy or the husband. I can't remember what it was, but that was one thing that I was surprised by seeing, is how well he kind of directed the conversation, that he was able to kind of just stay in control, but also moderate and facilitate their actual discussion. So it made it a positive experience. So,
should we jump to another point of discussion that's kind of talked about in the instructions?
Yeah, it's great.
Okay. Did we lose Rana? Was that how you pronounce it?
Yeah, Rana. Yeah,
I don't think we lost her. She's probably just doing something right now.
got her chair.
Okay, because I feel like she could totally answer one of the like the last bullet point. You know?
Is that the one that says discuss and record how our treatment professional or paraprofessional might prepare to capitalize on such opportunities? Is that the one you're talking about? Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. Because it's not as much directed towards the video. Because I feel bad that she's kind of out of the loop a little bit.
So she didn't do the reading either. So I don't know that she would be able to answer that, because she doesn't know what the resiliency factors are.
Here. Discuss and record.
My kids just walked in the door from church, so let me go tell them to brush teeth and stuff. I'll be right back.
Okay.
Hey guys.
Resiliency factors. So I am just looking through the document to see what things we could discuss for that.
Oh, you're good.
Sorry. All right. Never on still. No. Thank you. Just a little bit. Grace. Okay. So, sorry.
No, you're okay.
So for that last bullet point, is it talking kind of like the table 6.1? Let's see. Like how to apply this table and teach it to the families? Is that kind of what it's asking?
Let me see on that here. Trying to remember what table 6.1 looked like.
The key processes of family resilience, and it marks off the 9, and then the rest of the paper is like going into more detail on those 9 things.
Oh, gotcha. So it's like the making meaning of adversity, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Oh. I think it might be talking about it a little more generally. Like, how would this kind of situation or relationship prepare to, I don't know, to reinforce resiliency factors or introduce those? I don't
So
know how to answer that though.
I think kind of just like my like initial thought in regards to answering that question. I was actually really interested in this section of the actual chapter. They talk about using genograms to help families understand um, kind of like a historical meaning behind what the family's going through and the way that they respond to those situations. And I really liked the story how they kind of he had the daughter, I think her name is Megan, like draw her own genogram, and she drew her like the strongest relationship that she had in the family was in connection with her dog. And that just brought a lot of meaning, and I think that that really cleared up a lot for that family specifically, just helping them understand what that is. So I think that was one thing that I really enjoyed, is the fact that we can introduce things like a genogram or create like a family timeline, something that's visual, or have them do an activity like looking at their son and saying this. There's a lot of different things that we can do to introduce those concepts of making, making meaning out of our adversity or helping develop connectedness that I guess I didn't really fully realize before reading the chapter. I just think there's a lot of creative ways that we can help those families kind of see the big development behind it. I don't know if that makes sense or if it's just really confusing, but
No, that makes sense. It's good. Okay. Oh, wait. Okay, so I just saw this, but I guess. Wait. Oh, never mind. Sorry, I'm confusing myself over here.
you're okay.
Gotta listen to me.
So, do any of you, I'm just gonna hold it up, feel like you were able to apply this to the video that we watched and kind of, I don't know, I'm just like all the resiliency stuff. I'm like, okay, but all of this, like the genogram stuff, like that was interesting, but I'm like, with that video, like maybe my brain's just missing it, but I didn't understand how to apply it to that family. Like it made sense, like the example in the paper with the uncle that used to be in the gang and all that stuff. Okay, that makes sense for the girl with the dog. But in this video, I just struggled to see how I would apply these things to their family.
I think the only thing that I really saw that could have been possibly applicable was at one point the father discusses how I guess the therapist asks a little bit about the father's family and how they responded to things. And he said like we didn't really talk about things like this. And that kind of showed from my perspective the fact that the dad is kind of carrying on in the way that his parents were, because he just shuts down in response to stressful events. So that's the only thing that I really saw in regards to like the practical applications, is that I guess he could have gone further into understanding the grandparents and the dynamics of, maybe the mom grew up in a family who she did have a brother who got into drugs and stayed out late, and so that's why she's super concerned and responds negatively or something like that. That's the only thing that I really saw. I had a hard time with the stressor over time circle, seeing how he implemented that.
Yeah.
So
Well, do we want to talk about anything else? There's your chair. Or do we want to start recapping and kind of see what we come up with at that point?
Yeah, we can recap and everything.
Sounds good to me. And then just really quick, Morgan, if you want to send me that summary, I'll have the link afterwards. I can just submit both of those tonight if you want to send that to me after you're done.
Okay.
Then I can go ahead and those.
That sounds good. I'm just
But
hoping it
has
makes sense.
Microsoft Word once it was done.
Do what?
It said that it needs to be uploaded by Microsoft Word. So you can send it to him, however, but Jordan, did you see that it said Microsoft Word?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's in that format right now,
Oh.
so it should be pretty easy.
Perfect.
Yeah, okay. So bear with me. I pretty much just had everybody like their own little paragraphs, like first Tom, Emily, myself, the title, Group 6 meeting, prayer by Rana, and then points of discussion. Thomas started with discussing different types of approaching, therapy session, and clients. Okay. Pointed out positive outlook implemented by professional therapists. Constructive communication produces positive results. Therapist was great at clarifying of what people were trying to get at, right? He also linked reactions from children to parents and parents to children. He brought up many different expressions that were trapped emotionally. Parents setting firm boundaries showed resiliency. They tried to maintain those values even with Jimmy's rebellion. Therapists helped Jimmy see that he needed to take on more responsibility. The daughter is only getting attention because they need information from her. She's probably feeling a lot of loneliness and confusion. Therapist jumped the gun with responding too soon or too much, using genograms to help know how to respond to those different situations. We can introduce visual representations or activities to invite those concepts to productive family relationships and solutions and development. Does that sound like a thing?
It sounds it.
Okay. Okay. And then for Emily, I wrote, therapist keeps bringing up that all feelings from the family were coming from a loving place. Therapist was looking for blame. He didn't justify anyone or any behavior. He just moved on from those. He explains reasons behind strong emotions. Family communication has negative connotation and communication patterns, but therapist enables them to practice showing and putting effort towards loving one another. Therapists helped them set their own goals to strengthen subunit family ties to reduce vulnerabilities. Points out that he had the family change seating arrangements a couple of times with specific purpose behind it. Also discusses the fact that Jimmy was being mainly focused on. Therapist maybe needed to be a little bit more specific about what to talk about during family councils. Sorry. And then for me, I wrote therapist was great at moderating emotions. Trying to bring out different perspectives, therapist used reflections of content and feeling for the family to show he was very comprehensive. The family did have a couple signs of resiliency where Jimmy did have activities to turn to. Dad had work, and even though their communication was somewhat rigid, they were giving up, or they weren't giving up. which was shown from their going to a therapist in the first place. Just a second. I need to correct something. Therapists did try to lead more than follow the family discussion, which can be distracting and frustrating when a family member is trying to get a point across. And this is the end of the notes.
All right.
So is there anything that you guys would say that I need to change or edit a little bit before I send that over?
I don't really think
So
so.
it says note the trends of your findings as a group. Now, is that just in our discussion, or is that supposed to be noted in the write-up? I'm thinking just the discussion, right?
I believe so.
Okay.
Yeah, because I know
Yeah.
that specifically there were a few things that we overlapped on that we saw, like the positive outlook and all those different things that we saw. I think that we touched on those and noted those as well.
Yeah, I do not want to get too repetitive with anything, so I just
And the one, it says, was anyone surprised by the findings or observations? I think we were all kind of surprised that Jimmy said, what the heck did Jimmy say? That Jimmy said he felt unwanted and unloved. I know I was kind of expecting him to be like, I'm 18, leave me alone. But for him to open up and say, actually, I don't feel like I'm fitting, and so I'm leaving. So that would be the thing that surprised me, if that's what that question even means.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hey, this is Rana's husband. You guys, my name's Steve.
Hi.
I was just talking to Rana. She's pretty crushed about not having done the wrong assignment before this. Is there any way she can watch it and submit stuff to have you guys to participate, or is it something she needs to go find another group? You guys know the class better and what the teacher would expect and what's.
So actually, if I were her, I would look, because we're one of the earlier groups. There's a few more groups meeting later this week. So she could watch the video and do the reading and
just tag on this.
Yeah, so she would need to go back to the lesson 9 discussion board where where you signed up for groups, and then just email them directly. I actually had to do that with this group because it didn't work out with my other group. But if like timing doesn't work out, that's what the teacher said to do. And so I would just do that. I would just meet with another group instead, and then that way she can get participation with the other groups.
Okay.
Because there were some Thursday and some Friday groups that were there, so maybe one of them will let them in.
Okay.
Yeah. Let her know that that happens all the time, and that it's really just an annoying thing that happens.
Yeah.
She's listening. She's here.
We're all drowning. It's okay.
Thanks, guys.
All right.
Yeah.
Are we all set here?
I think so. Thank you so much, guys.
Yeah,
Thanks,
no
guys.
problem.
I appreciate it. You guys did good.
You too.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.